These are really nice tarps. They were very useful during the encampment, and I think they need to be reused.
So the power that we have in our workplaces, at the bargaining table, and as part of a broader political movement in this country, alongside our proud student organizers and unions across sectors. We have the power to use our labor power to defend higher education, defend our fellow workers, and demand that public funds go to meaningful, democratic, and liberatory education for all, not for war, not for occupation, not for private prisons or deportation. Last, I want to conclude by thanking all of the students who are here who might be attending an action for the very first time. Years ago, I was an undergraduate student here at San Francisco State University, where I received an invaluable education that changed my life. It was during the 2008 recession, where students also pitched tents and tarps on the quad to stand up for the budgets that were being cut, just as you're doing right now. So I believe deeply in your right to this space, your right to learn, think expansively and critically about the world that we're in, to develop your voice, to take risks and hone your moral and ethical convictions, and to have your well-being supported and find your place in this world. I know deeply that we can build another more just university if we continue to learn from each other, stand together, and defend it and each other as well. So I'm honored to pass the mic to others who are going to talk about other forms of repression.
Thank you so much. Give it up for Constance. Now I see a lot of folks who are shyly standing around, and I will invite everybody to come and sit down here on the tarps. These are really nice tarps. They were very useful during the encampment, and I'm really honored here to present our next speaker, Rosita, who's a nurse from UC San Francisco, a very active member of CNA for Palestine and Bay Area Labor for Palestine. Before she speaks, I want to make something clear. It is not possible to defend democratic rights and civil liberties with exceptions. You cannot say everybody has a right to speak, but those who want to speak in solidarity with Palestine cannot speak. You cannot say everybody must have the right to speak, but those who want to stand against this government and the illegal actions he's doing, right, against immigrant students, those need to be silenced. We cannot stand in general for civil liberties and then support the repression of trans athletes, trans students, trans workers. So when we defend our general freedoms, we need to be specific. And if we don't stand up against those who are targeted today, because we're afraid to stand up together, we're going to be divided and we're going to be isolated. This is why the speech for Palestine and free speech for Palestine is at the center of the defense of civil liberties and democratic rights in this country, and it's something our union is very proud to have defended. So now please give it up for Rosita, who's going to tell us what's been going on at UC San Francisco and the terrible repression faculty and employees are facing there.
Thank you, Bianca. So, like Bianca said, I am a registered nurse at UCSF. I've been there probably for the past 13 years. And I've been an active CNA member, which is the California Nurses Association member for the majority of that time. These past 2 years, we have seen the most repressive acts by the UC system, but also nationwide. What we have seen as those that have dared to speak out, and specifically healthcare workers, to speak out against a genocide, have been repressed. They've been forced to either quit, resign, to not speak out. They have been given administrative leave. I have one nurse actually who, Bridget Rochios, who is a nurse. She went to Gaza right before the Rafah boarding was closed. And she volunteered there as a midwife, birthing babies and there with maternal mothers. When she got back, she was forced off on admin leave because she was wearing a watermelon badge. Yeah, watermelons are very scary at this time, right? So administrator came to her and said, you know, you're wearing that, that's actually making people feel unsafe. What is unsafe about advocating for life and for the lives of Gazans and Palestinians? That is actually not scary. That's actually what I would want my healthcare worker, anybody who's my doctor, my nurse, to be doing. Because if you're not giving a fuck about genocide, sorry, I cuss a lot. I'm a nurse. if you're not caring about genocide, I actually don't think you really care about me. Because what we're seeing going on in Palestine is a whole healthcare system that has been completely demolished. We have seen doctors, healthcare workers that have been taken as prisoners, tortured. We have Dr. Abu Safia, who's actually in critical condition right now. He has been tortured. He's been put through humiliating torture by Israel, and they have him imprisoned. He was in one of the last hospitals that was seized. But UCSF has taken actually the UC system has taken a very repressive stance. So they're putting a lot of people or a lot of staff through very repressive forms of bullshit by trying to fire them, bringing them in for meetings. And so one of the ways that we have to continue to push back is through our unions and making sure that our unions stand up for us, making sure that our unions are right there with us in every single meeting, making sure that our unions are in every single corner of the facility and making sure they're speaking up for us. There's a lot more that I can say about repression. I'm also a UCSF FSJP, which is the Faculty Staff Justice for Palestine. And we're doing a lot of work across the UCs as well to bring light to what's happening. It can be isolating at times because, as we're walking through the halls, I'm not seeing, the amount of support probably that I'm seeing here. I have nurses that don't understand the complexity of advocating for your patients. If you're a nurse and you're caring for people, you have to understand how does criminalization work? How does mass incarceration work? How does racism work? How does environmental things affect health? All those things are things that we need to be able to advocate for. And as healthcare workers, when we're being told by our universities, by our workplaces, that we can't speak out about genocide, that is counter to all of our ethics. That's counter to everything that we stand for as nurses, as doctors, and as human beings. It's paramount that we continue to fight back in ways, either, if you're being repressed, make sure that you're reaching out to your union, making sure that you are creating some type of affinity group, seeing where your support is. Because there is help out there. There is plenty of support for everyone that's kind of going through repression. We just have to seek it out sometimes. It can be a little bit less obvious. Right here, I see plenty of people here that are ready to fight for freedoms and for civil liberties, which is absolutely what we need to be doing. We have also seen, I can talk about, there's students at Stanford. There's the Stanford 12 that are facing felony charges. They're facing felony charges for standing up and speaking out. This is an era where we're looking back at the 1960s and seeing the exact same type of repression that was happening in the civil rights era. We're seeing the exact same repression that we were seeing during Vietnam. That those that are speaking out and speaking and using what should be our civil liberties to be able to speak out are being repressed. We're being told that we can't say those things. We can't say that bombing children is wrong. We can't say that killing Palestinians is wrong. We can't say that settler occupation is wrong. And so we have to really reflect on that. And we have to, what is our point of privilege where we can speak out? As students, as staff, as healthcare workers, we have to continue to use our voices. I'm getting the 1 minute. The criminalization of speaking out is something that this government is trying to use in every single way it possibly can. We see that the government is now trying to get into the schools and control the curriculum that's being taught. We know that they're trying to they are banning books. They're banning words from research at our hospitals. You can't say woman. You can't get a grant for a research on colon cancer because you're saying social economic. I mean, we have to understand what this road is leading to and what it is. This is fascism. You don't want the government controlling what you learn. That's what we see in other countries that have dictators. And so I urge all of you to do what you can. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of resources available for you to plug in. You can come find me at UCSF. I'm the loudest one there. And then I also want to just give a short little plug. Please follow the GG26 Solidarity if you want to ask me about that as well. That's another criminalization of a group of 26 people who allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly on camera, did an act of civil disobedience. Thank you.
Okay. Where is Michael? Here. Nice speaker. My colleague, Michael Villegas, who's a teacher here in the Metro program in the College of Ethnic Studies, is going to be talking about academic freedom and free speech.
Those are two hard acts to follow. Let me just give a shout out to Constance and Rosita one more time, please. So since I am going to be talking a bit about, First Amendment, academic freedom, let me just get a quick check with y'all. Let's get some call and response going, yeah? Are we going to be silent? Nah. Are we going to be censored? Nah. Are we going to fight back? Yeah. Okay. All right, let's just make sure we're on the same page. Right on, right on. So I'm going to just start with some boring stuff first, right? I just want to get some basic things out of the way, right? Just to get things across that, to focus on the First Amendment, just to make sure we all know how it operates on a basic level, right? So first and foremost, it does not draw distinctions between citizens or non-citizens. This is really important for us to understand this, especially in light of the kidnappings and abductions of students all across our country. So I just want to make sure we get that across. As a side note, it's worth noting that this also applies to non-animate entities, like corporations. We'll come back to that shortly. Additionally, it's about speech. So it just protects speech across the board. Across the board, right? Universities in particular have a special concern as determined by the Supreme Court. As much as I don't trust or acknowledge their power on many levels, they have acknowledged that universities have a special concern and a special interest when it comes to free speech. And this is specifically so we can have not just academic freedom, which has to do with our ability to decide what we teach, who teaches it, the rules and regulations we have, and just basic assessments, right? Beyond that, it's about providing a space for public discourse, for free inquiry, and more importantly, to develop the capacity, I would say, for strong critical thinkers, right? Also, for us to have the ability to have political dissent. This is sort of part of that heartbeat of democracy that we all claim to want to have. So I just want to make sure that that's clear first and foremost. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of those kinds of details, but I kind of want to move on from that point. I think within the context of the moment right now, and what's going on with the Trump administration, I want to kind of pull us to how free speech, or I should say attacks on free speech, is being used as a means of deportation and as a means of attacking students that have been dissenting against our government's actions as it pertains to Palestine. Yeah? So the Trump administration specifically is using the idea that student protests on college campuses create what they describe as a serious and adverse foreign policy consequences. More specifically, what they have argued is that what students are doing here, specifically with the Palestinian encampments over the past year plus, that it sort of is part of this national security interest to combat anti-Semitism. Now, I don't know how to wrap my head around this nonsense, to be completely honest with you, but these are the flimsy ways in which they are justifying kidnapping and abducting students in plain clothes on the streets of the United States. Now, I want to sort of just move on a bit and just talk about what do you think the goals of these types of attacks are. And I think this is important for us here today, because many of us are out here and we're showing that we're not afraid. We're not afraid to get out here and speak our minds. We're not afraid to get out here and show our political dissent. But these efforts are designed specifically to chill political dissent and protest. They are designed to target centers of resistance like SF State. They are designed to neutralize any form of opposition to what this federal government and this MAGA agenda puts forward. We have to keep that in mind. And moreover, this is a tactic that we have seen pulled straight out of authoritarian dictators. This is their playbook. What do? You attack the free press. You attack the universities. You attack the legal profession. Because this is where resistance comes from. Students over the past year plus have showed us what moral clarity and political courage looks like. We should fucking celebrate that. So before I sort of just open up the idea of maybe a demand we could begin to formulate, I just want to end by calling attention to something that I said about a week ago. And what they said is that our job, and they posted this on Twitter and then erased it very quickly. But what they said, making sure I got a minute left. Yeah? Okay. What they said essentially is that our job is not just to police movement across the border, but to police ideas. To police ideas. So I just want to point out and give a shout out, and hopefully we can continue fighting for these students, for Mahmoud Khalil. I want to give a shout out and send all of our love to Ramesa Oster. I want to also give a shout out and send all of our love to a recent young man who was taken about 2 days ago, and I may get his name a little bit off, Modi Madawi. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that a little bit. You'll have to excuse me for that. But I think the last thing I'll say is what we could do is we could begin ultimately to open up the conversation and force and put pressure on our administration to make a powerful and assertive stance that we will protect students' right to protest and dissent, specifically students that were involved in the Palestinian encampments yesterday, but for any student in the future that wants to come out here and express their political dissent. We need our administration to support those students, to protect them, and to stand with them.
Our last speaker before we break into groups is Victor Silverman from Jewish Voice for Peace, who came here from Pomona College to tell us about the fight against anti-Semitism. Because let's be clear, our unions, our movements stand against all oppressions. And we combat racism, anti-black racism, anti-Arab racism. We combat Islamophobia with the same strength that we combat anti-Semitism in our campus. And we combat transphobia and sexism and homophobia. We stand against all oppressions. And we do not allow the fight against any oppressions to be weaponized to oppress others, because our solidarity is indivisible, and we will stand against anyone who wants to silence or discriminate against our constituents in our campus. And this is why it's so important today that we have Victor here from Jewish Voice for Peace. Give it up for him.
Thank you, Blanca, and to the other speakers. This was. I'm not going to come anywhere near. The strength, detail, activism, insight of the other speakers, but I'm going to try, and I need your help in doing something, because I'm going to commit an act of civil disobedience right here in front of you today. And that's part of why I'm here. Okay, let me just give you a little background on that. I am now retired professor of history and American studies from Pomona College. I'm an expert in Jewish history. I've taught and researched on Jewish history, on the history of the Middle East, the history of Israel and Palestine. I'm an expert in this area. But I'm also, since I'm retired, and I'm a US citizen, I'm somewhat untouchable. No, I'm just saying somewhat, because who knows what's coming, everybody, right? The reason I say all that is because the civil disobedience that I'm going to engage in right now is to violate something called the International Holocaust Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism. Now that's a big mouthful. And what that term means and why that's important is because that's a set of examples and ideas that are being used to attack universities, to deport students, to deny their visas, to disappear them, to close down academic programs, to cut off funds to universities, and to force our colleges and universities all over this country to conform to a political agenda of the far right in this country. Something that is completely different than anything that has ever happened with American universities before. And the technique they're using is to force schools and institutions, to force our government to adopt this definition. And what this definition does is weaponize anti-Semitism. That is, it's using false claims of anti-Semitism to justify all these attacks. For many of you, you already know this, but let me give a couple examples. In this definition, it makes it illegal, or ipso facto anti-Semitism, to say that Israel is committing genocide and acting like the Nazis. They're deporting people, they're using starvation as a weapon, they are committing a genocide. To say that, by this definition, is anti-Semitic. I've just said that, so therefore I, a Jewish man, bar mitzvahed Orthodox, from a long line of Jewish people, I'm somehow now anti-Semitic because I said that, because I said the truth. Right? Similarly, those of us who teach about this topic know many different aspects of this. Let me give you a couple more examples. I don't know how much time I have. I could take up the whole afternoon with these, but I won't, because there's a lot of other activism that needs to happen today in order to save this university, this great San Francisco State, and to save academia and higher education and our freedom throughout the country. There's a lot more to do. But I urge you, those of you who haven't studied these topics, to read up on it, to take classes. There's a lot of good information out there. One example of ideas that are forbidden under this International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition is for me to tell you that Israel has conducted ethnic cleansing in order to create a Jewish supremacist state. Right? That is, that they have declared themselves a state that only represents Jewish people's rights, that everyone else who lives within the borders of Israel, who are citizens or non-citizens under their rule, doesn't have the same rights as Jewish people. That's known in legal terms as the crime of apartheid, which Israel is guilty of. One other example, in terms of ethnic cleansing, in the formation of the State of Israel, during the so-called War of Independence in 1948, Israel ethnically cleansed more than 400, probably over 500 Palestinian villages, towns, and communities throughout the country. And the people who lived there were forced to leave their homes after the commission of terror acts in the middle of a war, and they were prevented from returning to their homes in a clear violation of international law, the Geneva Conventions, and basic human morality. This was done because the Zionist Israelis now wanted to create a Jews-only state. That's, again, a statement that is forbidden or defined as anti-Semitism. But it's not anti-Semitism, it's the truth. So what does this definition do? And why are we fighting it? I just want to point out before I get on that I am one of more than 40 academics around the country who are engaging in this act of civil disobedience right now in order to show the absurdity of this definition. There's many better ways to define anti-Semitism, to fight real anti-Semitism, which is a serious danger from the right, which is being conducted by our university administrators and by our government against Jewish activists who stand with their Palestinian and Arab and Muslim brothers and sisters. Right? That's where the real anti-Semitism is, not in talking about the truth of history. So they're doing it because it gives fanatical defenders of Israel a chance to squash debate and to prevent the enormous shift in the politics and understanding of the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis that's happening right now in this country. That's number one. The second thing is that it gives the boards, the trustees, and the administrators a chance to suppress activism on campus, to go after your unions, to go after your professors, to go after your fellow students.
Shame!
Yes, shame on them. Right? They're collaborating in this effort. And finally, this definition gives an opening. It gives an opening to the far right with their extremist agenda of Christian supremacy, of white supremacy, of Israeli supremacy that is seeking to transform colleges and universities. It's seeking to transform our society, to make the people assembled here second-class citizens, to make people not free in this country, and to deny all of us our basic rights. It's a fight that we're all in, something I learned in my many years in the union movement. I'm a longtime union member of the AAUP now. I was an organizer with the UAW for many years. I'm a plumber for many years. I know that solidarity is the key to fighting this, that I stand here in solidarity with all of you, with the immigrant and foreign students here, with the Palestinian students, with the Muslim students, with everyone who is facing this desperate, difficult time. Together, all of us, we will win. We will beat this, and we will do it by standing together. Thank you very much.